pretty sure I hear this song in my sleep because I've heard it about 100 and I don't know, 50 times, probably more than that, probably 200 plus, because when I go to edit, I actually edit it, so I get to listen to that multiple times. And I wish I knew who the artist was. It's open source music, and I don't even know who it is, but it's catchy, and when I hear it, it like perks my ears up. And sometimes I'll accidentally hit my podcast on my phone, and it plays through my car, and I'm like, oh, wait, that's me. That's so weird. Anyway, welcome to the 87th episode of the Trauma Informed Educators Network podcast. I'm looking forward to tonight, mainly because the guest is one of my friends, and last time she was on here and another of her colleagues. We had so much fun. I'm just like giddy that we get to do this again. It's pretty awesome. So before we get started, I do want to let you all know that it's coming up, and I want to tell you on the front end because I decided, you know what? We have a lot of people that listen to the podcast, and we want to get as many fellow disruptors to our virtual conference. So why not give all the podcast listeners a discount? Because we're not, I promise you, tonight's guest will tell you, putting on conferences does not get anyone rich. Matter of fact, sometimes it makes us poor. But I'm not making bundles of money off the conference. It literally is just because we're passionate about getting this work and getting people connected around trauma-informed education. So if you want to go to the Trauma-Informed Educators Network conference, which is June 22nd and 23rd, it is virtual this year. You can actually go to www.tienetwork.org right there. If you're looking, if you're listening, you heard the website. You can go under, I don't remember the tab, but it's not resources, it's the other one. And you can click the conference, go to Eventbrite, and you can put in TIEN podcast, all lowercase letters, in the promo code, and you will get 20% off. It makes it like $160 something. It is not expensive, you all. And in that conference, we're going to have Dr. Lori Desautel, who was at the ATN last year and who I just got to hear again a couple weeks ago. We're going to have Dr. Ricky Gibbs, a great, for matter of fact, Dr. Gibbs, just this week, I get a call and he's like, hey, I'm literally in your neighborhood. And I'm like, well, you literally better stop by. So he stopped by the house. We got to chat and got to see him in his fancy suit. You know, he always wears suits if you know Dr. Gibbs. He did not have his fancy studded shoes on, but he was looking sharp nonetheless. But he's going to come and get you fired up as the intro. And then our closing keynote is Robin Kogan, the relentless school nurse, who has so much to share. Her experience is remarkable. And I can't wait for you to hear her. Plus, we have 25 sessions. Tonight's guest is one of those sessions. But we have 25 sessions. All will be recorded, and you will get the recordings not to download, but to view for a period of time after the conference. And at the end of the day, we're still going to do our little home groups. So you're going to get to join the same group of people 4 times over the course of 2 days to get to know each other, to build connections, to build your network, and to have a group of people that you can connect to. And when we go to different conferences, we're going to talk about another one that we love. When you go, you get to meet them. And then it's like a little family reunion. And in our case, it's where disruptors unite. So if you want to come to the conference, please use that promo code of TIEN podcast, and that is all lowercase, and that will get you 20% off the podcast. All right. Whew, that was a lot. So I'm really excited. Oh, thank you, Megan. Megan put the link in the comments on Facebook. The backslash it's www.tienetwork.com/TIEN conference. That'll get you there. Look at this. I mean, our friends are amazing, Ginger.
I know.
And Meg is actually working with the network and bringing her Bala Viz X. I can't believe I said it right. I think I did. To people across the country, and we'll talk about that at another time. But anyway, Here we are with tonight's guest, Ginger Healy, MSW, LCSW. I love when we have clinical social workers and they get all these awesome letters behind their name. But she's worked for almost 30 years. She has 30 years of field experience. Ginger has worked as a child abuse investigator, hospital social worker, and a school therapist. She spent 15 years as a social service supervisor at an international adoption agency and was able to travel to provide support for orphanages all over the world. This job continues to inform her work at attachment and trauma needs in children. She's currently the director of programs at the ATN, which is Attachment and Trauma Network, great friends of ours. She co-anchors the podcast Regulated and Relational and speaks nationwide on trauma-informed schools, therapeutic parenting, and community engagement. She's also the author of Regulation and Co-Regulation, Accessible Neuroscience that Brings Calm into the Classroom. She's married and has 4 children, her greatest teachers about developmental trauma and special needs. Welcome, Ginger. How in the world are you? Can't wait to talk about this book. So how are you?
I'm so happy to be here. This is just fun and exciting, and I'm just happy to be here.
And I'm glad you're here. You know, anytime we get to hang out and chat is a good time, right? And we've hung out and chatted literally all over the place.
Yeah, we've hit a few states. We need to start marking our map.
There you go. And you came to Nashville last year for the Trauma Informed Educators Network conference. And then, hey, I was in Houston again for the ATN conference. And boy, was that rejuvenating and filled my cup to the brim. Matter of fact, it was overflowing. And I hope that experience and joy overflowed to others because being around like-minded people is truly something we all need to experience.
Amen.
So let's get into this. So you, you're like, hey, I'm just going to write a book. And boy, is this book amazing, right? I mean, it's only been out for a short period of time. And you're like, hold on a minute. Sold out. We got to get more. So tell us a little bit about regulation and co-regulation. I'm not going to say the whole title.
Yeah.
But tell us about it. How did it come about? Like,
kind of long. The name's kind of long, but the book is kind of short, which is also I'm pretty proud of because I know that educators do not have time to read a thick book. Nobody has time for that, right? And so it's accessible in so many ways because it's just easy. You can pick it up and put it down and go back to it. And that was the whole goal, to make it really easy, kind of like a 101. Dr. Delahook called it like the guidebook, and I'm like, oh, that's exactly what I was going for. So yeah, so it is out. It is doing really well. It hit number 1 in educational theory and emotional mental health. And what was the third one? Social science, something or other. It just took off. So I'm just so proud because it's needed and it's wanted and it's being well received. And that was the goal. Seems like every time I speak, probably every time you speak, sometimes we start to feel like we're saying the same things over again. And I always worry that people are like, enough already. We've heard it already. But actually, no, every time I speak, I know the same with you. People are like, where have you been? I need more. Talk to me about this. And so I knew that the book would resonate because of that response. Wherever we go, teachers, educators are hungry for support and for resources and validation and easy, accessible strategies. And so that's what this is.
And, I've talked about this work for a long time, and it doesn't matter how many times I say it or I hear it, practicing it is never easy. And so you can never hear it enough. You can never read enough about it, and you can never practice it enough, right? Yeah. Because life comes at us in a variety of ways. And I know we have friends going through things right now, and we are all communicating with them like, hey, we've got your back. And that relationship is the key. But I know that we feel that way, but there's times in which I have to pause, Ginger, and go, I have a 12-year-old, right? Matter of fact, about an hour ago, I was like, man, there is no co-regulation going on right now. Matter of fact, co-dysregulation, because one more time. And then I'm like, wait a minute, hold on a minute. We're getting ready to leave town tomorrow. I know he's a little anxious. We've never been to where we're going, and I have to talk myself through it. So you're so right. And for those of us who do talk about these things all the time, it's always good. Yeah. It's always good to read more, listen more, dig in more.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's funny that I was laughing because that has been my experience this week. Like, this house has been so dysregulated, and it's like, what's going on? Well, it's May. It's end of school year. I mean, it's so many things. And if it's not May, it's something else. Like, there's never just calm and peace, and life shouldn't be that way. It's not going to be that way. So that's not the goal. The goal is to manage it, to modulate it, to work together, to have support and resources, because it's never going to be like perfect, and it shouldn't be. So it's just that whole shifting of expectations in our home, in the classroom, and wherever that child is, everywhere, right?
But Ginger, I saw on Instagram, like, there's a lot of people that live like the perfect life and nothing ever happens, and they're always regulated and everything's great and their food looks good. It's not, and it's not the reality, right? And I love that you're candid in saying, listen, even my house right now in May, and my child, he ended school. He didn't go to school yesterday. Last day was Tuesday, and yesterday it wasn't even 3 hours. I heard, oh, I'm so bored. And I thought, you've been looking forward to this day. And he's like, oh man, I'm so bored. Today he actually went and volunteered at the school to help his teachers get it. There was a gathering of people, and he was like, can I go? And I was like, sure. So he went and helped his teachers clean their rooms and wash their cars. And I'm like, but he's wanting that connection. He's like, oh man, I just don't want to be at home. And I feel that in this anxiousness that he's feeling right now is that he doesn't have his little network of friends and people, and
or that structure and that routine and that predictability. And once that goes, it just sends us all into like this feeling of danger or perceived unsafety. It's like it immediately fires our nervous system immediately.
Well, so tell us a little bit about the book. So tell us, how did it come about? And, what was the process? How did you narrow things down to put in a book, especially when it is so tangible for a reader, for an educator, for a parent? It doesn't even have to be an educator to just grab it and go, oh man, I'm going to get some. How did it come about?
Yeah. It is for everybody. I'll say that right off the bat, because a lot of this comes from me as a parent who has been doing this work in the home, in the therapy office, in the school. So yeah, it is for everybody. Well, okay. So big shout out to the National Center for Youth Issues, because they are the publisher, and they really were the brains behind this series that they have called the 15-minute focus series. So they're just so smart, because they, work in the schools, and they figured out this framework for these books that they need to be short and sweet and succinct and get to the meat of it and get to the heart of it. And I love this framework that they have of questions and strategies and content and stories. It's just so digestible. So I got to give all that credit to them. Once they gave me that template, I was like, oh, I'm all in. And so originally when I went to them, I had felt inspired, prompted, pushed to write a children's book for children who experienced something scary. It could be anything. It came to me after a school shooting. And so that was where I came from, was just this deep desire to immediately intervene in a very broad way for all children with a story of what to do now, of how to heal. But National Center for Youth Issues said, it's a great idea, but I think what we need first is to help the educators. And then the educators can help the children. And I was like, oh my gosh, hello, you're right. I have just been a child therapist for so long that I was like, I want to get to the kids and get them this story. But it was just smart of them to say, let's get to the educators first, who then can get to the kids. And so that's what this book is. It's a love letter to educators saying, we see you, we hear you, and here is what will help you ongoing with these supports and resources and validation and all of the above. So that was kind of the brainchild. And as far as, just the topic of regulation and co-regulation, that's where it all starts. Nothing else can happen without that. That is the foundation. Until a child feels safe, is connected to a, committed, safe, attuned adult who can co-regulate with them, then they can learn. But it has to go in that order. The learning, the curriculum, the content. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, I know, but it comes after the safety and after, and we say regulation, but when I say regulation, I mean co-regulation, because a child cannot self-regulate for years, if not ever. You have to be co-regulated a million times before that self-regulation develops. And even when you have regulation skills, it is still much more efficient, better, stronger, powerful, more impactful to co-regulate. We know this as adults. You and I have been talking about our friends and the power of the connection we have. We're two functioning adults.
Yeah, that's almost laughable on some levels.
Almost. But we need each other. We need our friends. We need co-regulation. So if we need that as functioning adults, children, there's never not a good time to co-regulate. There's never not a time that we don't need it. The need never ends until the day we die. And so this whole book is just that shift, hopefully, that's already been made of the importance of regulation and co-regulation before anything else. And then once that's into place, then we see the brain light up. Then we see curriculum and content being absorbed. Then we see test scores rise, and on and things even more important than inside the classroom, life and survival and depression alleviation and suicidal ideation, all these things that to me are paramount. That's what this is hitting. Connection. We don't heal in isolation. So, stop me at some point, because I will just preach until I run out of breath on this.
Hey, I'm over here in the choir, and I'm just raising the hallelujahs, because it's true, and it's interesting, Ginger. Just this last few weeks, just a couple weeks ago, I was at the Nashville Soccer Club soccer game, and I went out to refill my drink, and ran into a friend, and we chatted for a while. I hadn't seen him for a long time. He is an adoptive father of 4, and then has 2 of his own birth children. And we were just chatting and catching up, and kids are at high school and all this. And I asked how his oldest was doing, and he said, you know what? He's doing amazing. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you why. I realized his struggle was about me. Mm. He's like, I would come home from work, and I'd be all stressed and overwhelmed, and I would be popping off. And then I was like, oh my goodness, like, that's it. And he is not in education. He's in the music industry. It was powerful to me to go, this is the work. Yeah. I mean, this is the work. And it was through some processes that he identified it. And then just this week, I'm talking to a friend, and he's going through a lot with his child. And all I said was, you just have to keep showing up, and you just have to keep, you got to actually say or put in writing, I love you. And in the words of James Moffat, I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And yep. It is this continually showing up. But Ginger, you're so right in that it's about us.
Yeah.
All of this work
Yeah.
is about us. It's about the adult understanding that we can't weaponize de-escalation and self-regulation to have kids. You're supposed to be self-regulating.
No.
It's about us and
Yeah.
modeling and showing up and continuing to show up and knowing we can't show up and step out, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
these processes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like we said at the beginning, we're not perfect. We're never gonna be perfect. So it's actually even more important to show and model your mistakes and how to repair them. That apology is everything. Because if we expect these kids, first of all, to be perfect, to follow the directions, to do everything, we're setting them up for failure. We're shaming them for being human. And we are totally, hypocritical in our efforts to heal them because we are still on the path. So we have to model that. This week, it's so interesting. You keep hitting on things that are just resonating in my own home because my oldest son, is adopted, and he came to me this week, and I was listening, I thought, and validating and all that. And finally he said, Mom, I just need you to tell me you what did he say? I just need you to tell me when I'm doing a good job. He just needed to be seen and heard because he was feeling from all, from work, from school, from wherever, that they were correcting him, but all he heard was the things that he was failing at. He needed to hear what he was doing well at. He was already telling himself all the things he was doing bad. He lives in that. He swims in that. We all do. He didn't need that. He needed me. And I'm so grateful that he finally basically said, Mom, here is what. And I went, oh my gosh, I preached this all day, but I did not hear what you said at first. I did not recognize what you needed. So, and then I was like attuned, so I was grateful for that reminder. Like, I got to be present. I have got to put down the distractions, and I got to be with my kid in all forms, completely attuned, so that I respond to that need that he so desperately needed. So I had a lot of apologizing to do, which I have always had and always will. But at the end of that conversation, it was like, oh my gosh, the barriers were gone and the dysregulation was gone, and it was me. It's exactly what you said. It was me that had to shift my expectations, change, my response. It was me that had to do the changing. And once I did, he was regulated, but I was making it worse until I had that come to Jesus moment.
Yeah, interesting enough. I hope nobody from my child's previous school is listening, because then I'm about to give them a heads up. But last year, my child, he was in 5th grade, and it was an awful year. It was an awful year for him. He felt that same way. That only thing that was identified, especially at school, was what he was doing wrong. He struggled all year. He struggled with emotional regulation. He struggled with grades. He struggled with academics. Never before have we experienced this with my child. He always was very motivated to go to school. And yet this year it all changed. He was thriving. He was motivated to go to school. He was excited to see his friends. He was excited to be at school. And we started talking. And it was the way in which the school managed children's behavior. And in his elementary school, there was a lot of negative focus. There was a lot of correcting behavior and the way they handled mistakes academically and socially and emotionally. And they used practices that were shaming. And so I literally sat down this week and I drafted a letter. My child hasn't gone there in a year. We also found out there was a teacher that was making inappropriate jokes towards kids. There's just a lot going on.
Yeah.
And this came from conversations. And I've drafted a letter, not because I want anybody to be in trouble, not because of anything other than I want you to hear my son's voice. I want you to know what he felt. And that again is on the adult. How do we get it? Has to be from our kids sharing their perspective, sharing their voice, and adults being willing to hear it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I will tell you, I've learned quickly that we have to do our own work. And I know this is part of your book too, especially with that co-regulation. We have to know our own nervous systems. We have to know when a kid is advocating and this, the word, I just cringe, Ginger, respect.
Yeah.
Yes, I teach my son to advocate respectfully.
Right.
But it may come across as someone who doesn't have a child who can advocate for themselves as disrespectful simply because the child just said what they thought in a way that expressed their own feelings, right? And man, is that such a ingrained process within so many schools where co-regulation can't happen, self-regulation can't happen, because there's this barrier of I'm an adult, you're a child, you respect me, you do as I tell you to do.
Yeah.
I can yell and scream and holler, but if you respond, you're going to get it. And that's really what your book is digging into is this idea of like, no. We all have to recognize our human selves and we all have to be responsible for ourselves. But in order for children to be responsible for themselves, they have to see it from the adults in their lives. Yes?
Right. Amen. And listen, there are going to be kids that are easier for us than other kids, and kids that maybe I jive with better than you do, because we all have different triggers, different histories, different issues. Our senses come into play, a million things. And so if we know ourselves and our triggers, our weakness, what activates us, then we can ask, for help. Like, it's not working with this kid. I just can't get through, or I can't have the patience that I need. I need you to cover for him. I need somebody else to step in. I got to walk away. We can do the social mapping where we make sure every kid in the school has somebody. And it doesn't have to be me for everybody. Some of us want to rescue, want to help, we can't. It's just, physically not possible. It's not emotional. We should not be burning out. There are just ways to alleviate burnout. There are ways to reach every kid through everybody in the building, and not even in the building, bus drivers, right? I mean, lunch staff. There is so many people that these kids can interact with, that can look them in the eye, give them a fist bump and say, I am so glad you are here today. I missed you yesterday. I noticed you were gone. And if for whatever reason that kid just isn't working for me, that's okay. Somebody needs to, we need to make sure all the kids are covered. But it is about, for a lot of people, it's the disrespect thing. For a lot of people, it's lying. There are just certain things that just, for whatever reason, push your buttons, but you have to know what they are. And you cannot be like, well, that's just, you have to be willing to look at that and be vulnerable enough to understand that's your thing. It's not the kids,
And I think too, in those moments, being honest with kids. I used to, when I was a principal, kids would come in and I would say, listen, right now, I am so angry or frustrated.
Yeah.
I need a minute. So
I need a minute.
There's, where my fidgets are, where my calm toys are, you can sit down, you can go look at the lizard, you could do whatever it is that you want that's safe. But right now, I need a minute. Like, I have to get that is okay. I do it with my son as well.
Yes. And it's more than okay. It gives them permission to feel what they feel. Because this is not about stopping the feelings. It's not about calm down, stop doing that. It's about what is happening. Why did that happen? Let's get to the bottom of it. And so that we can navigate it. We are not squashing feelings. We are not calming down. We're not. We are feeling what we are feeling. And because we are human, and because of that, we are figuring out how to manage and modulate and navigate all that. And you don't have to do it alone. You shouldn't have to do it alone.
You know, I don't have this person's name. And if you're listening on the podcast, I think this is a really important comment from one of the Facebook users that's listening live. They said it's also helps to build emotional vocabulary and normalize it. I agree with that. And I will tell you, as an elementary school principal, I knew kids came with 4 emotions: happy, mad, sad, and hungry. That was it. So they could be frustrated. They could be irritated. And it was, I'm mad. They didn't have the vocabulary to express what it is that they're feeling. And a lot of you know, when you hear me speak, I talk about the positive childhood experiences study from Dr. Bethel and Dr. Sege. And the one thing that they studied were children were able to express their emotions to their family, right? That's so important that we help, right? Not we as teachers, but we as parents, we as teachers, we as community members, I don't care where you are, that we give kids the verbal vocabulary, the tool to say, I'm really irritated right now and I need a minute, or what you're doing right now is frustrating me.
Yeah.
And then the adult to be in that co-regulation space of going, I hear you. I'm going to step back. When you're ready, give me thumbs up. And Ginger, these are skills, right?
Yeah.
This isn't just like do it. As for an adult, this is a muscle that we have to flex.
That's exactly right. It's built, it's scaffolded, it's created. We aren't born resilient. We aren't born gritty. We shouldn't even jump to grit and expect a child to persevere. That is so shaming. We have to build it, and we build it through relationship, and we build it through repetition, and naming those emotions and giving that vocabulary. I bet you $10 that was Jody Place.
You are right. Ding, ding, ding,
I knew it.
Jody, shout out to Jody Place for the comment.
I knew it because I know her, and she lives and breathes this, and she is the epitome of trauma-informed education. But what she is saying is true, and here is also why. Dr. Dan Siegel, we learned this from him, that the whole name it to tame it, it's not just about a strategy that works. Naming the feelings actually releases neurotransmitters in your brain that soothe. So, you know, the oxytocin and the dopamine, they have to fight off the adrenaline and the cortisol that's released when there's danger, whether it's real or perceived. So giving it a name crosses the barriers of the brain and releases those neurotransmitters. It immediately soothes and comforts because it's self-validation. And when we go, you're right, say it out loud, call it out, write it, whatever it is that you need to do to express that, we normalize it and give that kid back control, because those feelings make them feel so out of control. They hijack the body. That adrenaline, cortisol hijacks the body. So this is how you take control back, is you say, I got you. I know what this is. You're trying to hijack me, but no, I've got this. I know what I'm feeling. It's okay to feel it. I'm human. I can be mad. I have permission to, I can be frustrated. I can be whatever I am. And that is how I feel. And now, I can move on to what to do to go from there, rather than getting stuck in that emotion. That's what happens if we don't name it and vocalize it and share it out loud.
I love what Joe Brummer says, and Joe has been a guest on this podcast and is the author of Building a Trauma-Informed Restorative School. He says words are portals that transform us, including words for our feelings. Love is conversation. And that is it, right?
Yeah. Amen.
And how often do we see kids shut down for expressing themselves? And I'm going to be honest and transparent. How often do I do that to my own child because I'm not ready to receive it or hear it? And then I'm like, I can't do it today. And then I'm like, wait a minute. Why did I do that? Right. And this is human.
No.
It's us being human. And that rupture repair is so, that's the process of relationships. Sometimes things rupture in relationships, whether that's with colleagues, whether that's with spouses, whether that's with our children, whether that's with anyone. And it's the repair where our relationships strengthen if we become vulnerable enough to go through the process.
Yeah, that vulnerability is the key, but that relationship will be so much stronger after it builds so much trust. And this work, listen, this work is hard. I am not at all saying, oh, here's a strategy, put it into place and life is going to be great. I mean, but we're living already. We're in the building already. We're struggling already. How is it working for us already? It's not. It's not working. So I'm telling you, as hard as this is, the payoff is just immense.
I put a graphic out. It's been, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago. I don't know. And it was, something in the realm of, I don't understand why adults don't understand why kids are so dysregulated. I mean, literally they've gone through a pandemic, missed tons of school. This was right after the Nashville Covenant school shooting, actually. And I'm like, they're literally worrying about being shot at school. The impact of social media, all these things. Like, I don't understand why as adults, we haven't paused long enough to go, I mean, this is and I should be beep show, right? It is really for our kids. This is a completely different lived experience than any of us have ever had, for sure. And yet we just try to get back to normal. And Ginger, I think why we continue to see this perpetuation of things getting worse is this idea that we've got to do more of what we've always done to get back to where we were. And here's the thing. I believe this. We are never going to be able to go back.
No.
We cannot go back. Matter of fact, the only thing to do is to move forward. And if we want to learn how to move forward, get Ginger's book and start looking at those strategies, because that's it. We know this. We've known this before the pandemic.
Yes.
We believe it after the pandemic. Matter of fact, even more after the pandemic. We can't do what we've always done.
It proved it. And it's not, none of this trauma-informed, trauma-sensitive, trauma-responsive, healing-centered, child-centered work is like a fad or a trend. It is so layered in proof through the neuroscience. And that was such a joy as I wrote the book, because it was coming from me, but it was just echoed and reinforced. I had 110 citations, and I had to cut out 100 more. It's just, the work is out there and it's so good. And it's just, it's beautiful and it works, it's work.
I was looking, and Dr. Desautel's, Dr. Lori spoke at the ATN last year, and she put out a graphic this week, I think, about coercive regulation instead of co-regulation. And man, did it make me think, right? Like, and I think that's really important, because we're not co-regulating to get kids to do what we want them to do, right?
No.
We're co-regulating to teach them the processes of what to do for self-regulation by experiencing it in relation as a human being, because we know we have that mirror neurons and neuroconnectivity between ourselves, that's what it's about. And I loved when she produced that, because I'm like, it's so true. It's the same as relationships, right? We weaponize relationships. Well, if you have a good relationship, they'll do what you want. What?
Any coercive anything is short-lived, and it's shallow. It's not life. It's not long-lasting, and it's not healing. It's going to do more damage. When we talk about those how to be trauma responsive and we have to avoid that re-traumatization. We do. And it's a fine line, because I think this work can get weaponized, but it is so not that. It's having that trust in our body and ourselves, and looking underneath that iceberg for the why. That's how we heal. That's how we fix, not just managing symptoms and putting on a Band-Aid and stopping the behavior. That's not it at all. It's what is going on that encourages this child to fight, flight, freeze, faint, fawn, flock, all of the above. What is going on that's causing them to feel unsafe? That's what we got to figure out.
Yeah, and I say this, and this has been the horse I've been riding on, right? The last, I don't know, year. We've got to quit acting like trauma is something that only happens outside of our schools. We got to quit pretending that it's in someone else's house, right? Yeah. Just like you and I were talking about how this work happens in our literal homes every day, and how we mess up every day. We have to start looking at internally, right? On what are we doing internally to co-regulate, self-regulate. And Ginger, I think that our school admin have to really start pushing a giant big old pause button and think about, what am I doing? What can we do? So when your publisher is ready for 15 minutes of trauma-informed leadership, let me know. I have some friends, James. I think we could knock out a good book really quickly about how do principals co-regulate with staff and with students, right? How do we co-regulate with adults, right? Because parents and community members, and again, this is thinking about a socio-ecological model. This is systems down to individuals and individuals up to systems. It is absolutely imperative that everyone that interacts has accessibility to knowledge and understanding of this and experiences it. Jim Sporleader, I asked him when he was the very first guest on this podcast way long ago. And the question I asked him is, what would you do differently if you did it again? And he said, I would have treated my parents the same way I treated the students. But I saw them as grown, and I didn't have the same empathy for them as I did the kids. And boy, does that make so much sense, because we have to co-regulate. We have to model, even for the parents who come in and are dysregulated.
Yes. Relationship.
And I was in a lot of situations where that was really hard. And interesting enough, a parent came in to tell me what he was going to do to me, how he's going to do to me, and how fast it was going to happen. And I just listened, and I basically said, it sounds like you're really frustrated. And he said, yeah. And he went off for a while. And I said, it actually sounds to me like you feel hurt by what happened. And let me tell you, Ginger, it went from 1 million at 100. What's boiling 212? He was at 211. And then he began to come way down to like 70 degrees, in which that door opened, and he began to tell me why he was so hurt. And it was all to do with his own school experience. That was it. And I just listened, and he was a big dude. And we hugged while we both cried, because I felt his pain in my experience too. And I had to stand in a space of empathy and understanding, because I experienced some of the things he had experienced, but I had to show him that it was different. I was different, and that we could go through this journey together. I remember my secretary go, I don't know what happened, Portel, but he went in yelling. He came out crying. I don't know what you did. And I said, I just showed up. That's it. I just showed up. And we just have to show up.
Yes, because we want that for us. I want you to show up for me. I want somebody else to show up for me. And that's how we heal the kids. Relationship is built okay, as a therapist, I can meet with a kid an hour a week in an office, but that kid spends all his time at home and at school. So the relationships I need to be helping with, we all need to, is the teacher and the parent. That who is wrapping around the kid. Whoever is in that kid's life, that's the relationship that needs to be healed. Then they will heal the child. So it does. It starts with us as the adults.
Oh my goodness. I mean, seriously, we only talked about the first thing on the list, Ginger, and it's already, I mean, we just went through 45.
I still have a story.
Oh, please tell your story. And listen, we didn't plan this, you all. I put this on. It was the one closest that I grabbed, and
Yeah.
Ginger was like, hold on, I get mine. And I realized we're actually what we hashtagged at my school, cute and coordinated, is what we hashtagged anytime we wore the same thing. So please tell this story because it's amazing.
Okay. I was at the conference last year and got my t-shirt, my beloved t-shirt, put it on and drove to the airport. Went through security and got flagged.
Yes.
Because not only was I a disruptor, but I was unapologetic about it, apparently. So much so that I wore it all, in a bright red shirt. So I was pulled aside. Made it to second base with a TSA agent.
Oh, and then they made you cover it up, right?
Well, it took me a second. I mean, now looking back, I know exactly why they flagged me. But at the time, I just thought I was lucky, right? And so then I get to the gate and I am just getting eyes being stared. And I'm like, so I covered it up because
Ginger, I think it's so funny because you told me that story like right after it happened. And I'm not going to say the shirt, but I saw a young man wearing a shirt in the airport that was much more offensive than this. And his chest was stuck out high and he was wearing it and owning it. And I was like, now, if he can wear that, and I will tell you, I've worn this in the airport and I have not been flagged. So, I mean, maybe it's just you look suspicious. It could be.
Yeah, my kids always tell me I'm sus.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I would say I don't get that vibe, but maybe I'm not a good reader of people. I don't know. But anyway, thank you for sharing that story. And you all, we do sell unapologetic disruptor shirts. Usually when we're at conferences or if I come and speak, I'll bring some. I tried to sell them like online and then I realized, oh my goodness, like packing them, getting to the post office, getting the right postage. It was just way too much. So I don't do that anymore. But hey, next year at the ATN conference, I'm sure I'll be there and I will be having my giant little rolly bag with packed full of t-shirts. So I know we're almost out of time, but please tell us about, you just got some big news about ATN and one of the speakers. Tell us a little bit about ATN before we go and the dates and who's going to be speaking.
Okay. The Attachment and Trauma Network does an annual Creating Trauma-Sensitive Schools conference. So our 8th annual conference will be February 2024 over President's Day weekend. We have the first 2 days are in person in Dallas, and then the last 2 days are virtual. And our closing keynote speaker.
Hold on, drum roll.
Yeah. Nadine Burke Harris.
Ginger, let me tell you something.
Oh.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you how big it is, because I know how big it is. Because Dr. Harris and I were on a podcast on separate, but the same podcast. It was a series. It hasn't even been released yet. This is so bad. I can't even believe I admitted it in public. But her email address was on there, and I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan, and I did it. I shouldn't have done it, but I just checked to see how she was, and I invited her to the podcast, and she said, because most people know she took a major pause after she was the Surgeon General. She stepped back. She's like, breaks, no more anything.
Yeah.
So this is huge, you all. Dr. Nadine Burke hasn't done much of anything for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I respect her for it because it was about
Yes,
her own self-care.
exactly.
So like, this is huge. I mean, it
Huge.
is
Huge.
it's
I have a Nadine Burke Harris story in the book that you'll read because I have a major fangirl moment that happened to me too. She is and has been and always will be my hero. And so anyway, the conference is amazing every year, and it's going to be equally, if not more amazing in 2024. Right now we're taking proposals. So submit your proposal to speak. We have other exciting speakers too that we'll be announcing soon. So stay tuned for that. And then listen to my podcast, Regulated and Relational. We have updates on that and just lots of good information. So lots of resources from the Attachment and Trauma Network.
And they are great friends of ours. And I always love those collaborations and connections between the Trauma Informed Educators Network and the ATN. And it's, if you don't know about Attachment and Trauma Network, check them out. And the work they're doing is amazing. And I always love being a part of it in whatever scope and way I can. At the end of the day, we're all just fellow disruptors trying to unite and change what's best for our kids and communities. So thank you. If you are interested in the book, it is in the chat. If you are listening on, not in the chat, this is not Zoom. It is in the comments if you're listening live. If you are on the podcast, you can purchase it on Amazon. It is Regulation and Co-Regulation, Accessible Neuroscience and Connection Strategies that Bring Calm in the Classroom, 15-minute focus series. It is available on there. Please go and get it. Ginger, if people want to follow you and just what you're up to and all, where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm on social media, Ginger Spackman Healy on Facebook, Cedar City Ginger Snap on Insta, Ginger Healy on LinkedIn, Ginger Healy LCSW on Twitter, and then always just attachtrauma.org for all things ATN related.
Well, you all, this was a fast and furious, I feel like we just started and here we are already concluding. But thank you, Ginger, for being on here. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for this remarkable resource that I hope every listener will grab a hold of. It's a great summer read because it literally will only take you a day. And therefore, your summer is available to go sit by the pool and do whatever it is that brings you joy. So this could be, you're like, oh, on my summer read list, the number one is Ginger's book because you can knock it out of the park. So,
and we're doing 3 book studies this summer for educators, for parents, for caregivers, child serving professionals. There is book studies. So look for those too.
So check those book studies out, join them, grab the book, and just have a conversation with friends. Speaking of conversations, don't forget that the second Tuesday of every month, we have the Trauma Informed Educators Network Global Gathering. We have been 3 months in. Ginger hosted last time because I had to go out and meet some friends, but we will be meeting again next month in June. There is no anything when you come in. It is just, let's just come and chat and have fun and enjoy each other and connect to people from all over the globe. It is no stress. It is literally about connection. So I hope you'll join that. And as always, remember the Trauma Informed Educators Network conference is coming up virtual. And if you want to register, you can get that 20% off for listening to the podcast by using the promo code, all lowercase letters, TIEN podcast, and you can go to the tienetwork.org and go to /TIEN conference and register for that. Whoo! Let me tell you right now. Whew, that was a lot. You can follow us at Trauma Informed Educators Network on all the platforms. If you want to follow me, I'm Matthew Portell. And as always, please, please, please go out into the world and do something absolutely awesome. All right. right. Thank you all who are on here live. Great comments to all of our friends that showed up tonight. Much appreciate to you all. Dustin, Tracy, Joe, Jody, everybody that was on here. Thanks, Jonathan. I feel like, Jonathan, we were just together yesterday in my other role, Paces. I really appreciate all of you coming and listening. And if I didn't call your name, it's either because I didn't see your name on there or I didn't see your name on there. So thank you all so very much. We really appreciate you being with us. Next week, I will not have a podcast. I will be on vacation on the beach somewhere in North Carolina. But the following week, I will be back, and I'm looking forward. I think that is when I'm having the author of a book that was trying to be banned in the county I live. When a parent stood up in a parent meeting and said, "I don't know why you're writing books about this. You should write books about chickens." So the author wrote a book about a chicken who's very empathetic, and I will be hand delivering a copy to each of the schools, elementary schools in my county, on behalf of her. Anyway, I'll see you all. Ginger, you stay on a minute. Thank you all. See you all soon.